Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on B2B social media tips. This is very exciting. We are going to try and whiz through this presentation today so that you can get on. So we're just going to start with some quick introductions, and then we'll get into our presentation. For those of you who are unfamiliar with us, Technology Advisors is a software consultant. Find products like CRM, marketing automation, business intelligence software, etc., to fit their needs and budget. I'm going to be your host today, along with our knowledgeable presenter, Cassie. Cassie's the marketing communications manager at Sales Fusion with awesome asset as a solution marketing automation platform. So you have not one, but two marketing gurus on with you today, and we hope that we can provide some really valuable takeaways. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Cassie to get us started.
Great, thanks so much, Janine. Since it's a quick presentation today, we're going to just jump right in. And first, I wanted to address what's important in the world of B2B. There are really a lot of goals that someone can have in mind when employing their social efforts, including increasing, really humanizing your company, establishing yourself as a thought leader, connecting with prospects, clients, industry influencers, increasing lead conversion rate, and the list really could go on and on. But this just goes to show that these are some of the top things that are goals for B2B companies while they really employ their social efforts. So now we'll get into the 10 tips of really how to optimize your social presence. One is to stay focused. So really, there are obviously a plethora of social media platforms out there, with more being added every day. So, I would suggest that you don't try to jump into as many as you can at one time, but instead make the most sense for your brand. So on the next slide, we'll show really how to determine which platforms you should start with. And I would suggest using these steps. So first would be identify your audience. Ask yourself, who's my typical customer? What's my target profile? From there, you'll want to define your goals. So improve customer support, etc. What's your main goal throughout your social efforts? You can actually go and find your audience. So look at the demographics of each platform. How active are the users of your target prospects? And also, where are your competitors and where are they having success on which platforms? So really, you're setting yourself up for failure if you try to establish a presence on multiple platforms at one time when you're just trying to dive in and put as much coverage across each platform. Instead, I would suggest focusing on the one or two platforms where you think you have the most success, and then grow into other platforms from there. So we'll move on to our second tip, which is post regularly, but not too much. Like in many other areas of marketing, consistency is key. If you're sporadically posting to social audience, instead, on the flip side, you can also lose followers by posting too often. There is no exact science on how often you should be posting to each platform, posting quite as much as you would to Twitter, and then Google Plus and between those. Of course, this will always vary depending on your following. If you have more followers, the more you can get away with posting, as well as other factors like your industry and the content that you have. So, this is always often so, each platform really has their own tone, and you want to be sure that you're using the right tone and supported social trends on each platform. So for example, you'll see that, hashtags and photos and are really vary by platform. Sorry, let's go back to 3. For example, hashtags should always really be used on Twitter and Google+. But of course, this is a tip that you have to be careful with because this is something that's constantly changing. So you need to make sure that you stay up to date on the tone and language of each platform, sharing the same message across each. Yep. We are suggesting that you don't just curate your content. So it's important to establish yourself as a trusted thought leader through your social platforms, and sharing content that's not just your own can help with this. So you're not just a commercial for your brand just selling across social. This is also a great tip to help with the consistency of posting. So unless you have a really large team, it can be difficult to create content needed to have a fresh stream of social posts. We know that it's really difficult for even companies with large teams to always have a lot of content to share, and with social and the amount that you're sharing per day, curation can really help with that. So on our next slide, I'm going to share a tip with you. So for those of you that are cringing at the idea of sending your followers to anywhere besides your own website and content, there are free tools out there, such as Simply, that allows you to actually add a badge of your own content to any third-party pages just by using the URL that you share on your social. So you'll see here on the bottom left-hand corner, we're sharing a trusted thought leader in the industry, MarTech Advisors content, but we are actually adding some Sales Fusion content in hopes that people will enjoy the article and click off and end back up at our website. So in our 6th tip, number 5, I skipped one. So keep the social in social media. You want to respond, interact, follow back. You can't just push out content and expect to have success on social media. You really need to engage with your brand influencers, start conversations, ask questions, connect with your customers. Just keep it social. It is called social media for a reason. And again, you can't just be a commercial for your brand. You really need to engage and start conversations. So now for our 6th tip is to respond to all feedback. Of course, we're all happy to jump at the chance to respond to positive posts that are put out there on the Twitterverse for all of us to see, but it's also really important to respond to the not-so-positive posts. So I suggest resist the urge to delete negative comments and instead address it head-on. I would suggest that you would first reach out to the person who issued the online complaint offline in hopes that you could resolve it, and then maybe resolve it enough for them to actually decide to remove the comment from social. So that can be a tough one to actually follow, but number 6 would be to respond to all feedback. For our 7th tip, we encourage employee advocacy. So this is kind of a disheartening stat, but brands post on social networks reach only 3% of fans, according to Forrester research. So all this time and energy and effort you're taking to create the content, to really develop the message in the post, when you share it out there, you're reaching such a small subset of your social network and your potential audience. So by encouraging employee advocacy, it helps to really further influence yourself and as a company, as a brand, as a trusted resource. And in fact, content shared by employees receives 8 times more engagement than content shared by brand channels. So obviously, if your employees are sharing out, they can be the exact same message and post as your brand is sharing, but you're really increasing your opportunity to get in front of your audience. And sometimes this can be difficult to get your team on board to do, especially for those who fall outside of marketing. But there's something in it for your employees as well. It's an easy way for them as a person in the industry to build an online personal brand. And also for your sales team, this should be an easy way to get them on board by sharing the stat that sales reps using social media as a part of their sales techniques outsell 78% of their peers. So Deneen, I know that Technology Advisors probably has done some of this in the past. So is there anything that you can share with us?
Yeah, actually, pretty much going along with what you're saying, Cassie, that sometimes it's hard to get the employees to do this because, look, we're all really busy. They have their jobs too, and maybe they're not on social media during the day when you're posting and doing these things. So sometimes there's little other things that you can do in addition to just asking them to kind of support you on that. One thing that we did at TAI was I simply just asked everyone, I gave them a template, if you will, of social media icons because we weren't uniform in that. And when I had everyone put those social media icons in the signatures of their emails, that alone already started getting us more social media interactions. So they didn't really necessarily have to do any extra work on that other than put it in their email signature and then they'd forget about it. But it's just there reminding people that it exists. And then, in addition to that, once they did have the time to post, same thing that you're saying, Cassie, like people wanted to hear from them in that way. So there's little things that you can do to kind of encourage your employees to get on board with you with this.
That's great. We've had the same sort of experience that the easier you make it for the team, obviously the more inclined they are to actually to share. Great. So for our 8th tip, I'd say automate wherever you can. So there are a lot of automation tools out there that can help. Sales Fusion, as a marketing automation platform, actually has an integration with Octopost, a leading B2B social publishing platform. And really, Octopost and other automation tools can help you to schedule out your posts for consistency's sake. Keeping your content organized, making sure that you're continually pushing out the right messages and different messages, keeping things fresh, maintaining that fresh flow of content. Again, all things that automation tools can help with, and a lot, including Octopost, can also help with employee advocacy. So, having the supporting technology to really make sure that your social efforts are consistent and top part is a good tip. So we just have 2 tips left. Number 9 is to measure results and adjust accordingly. Of course, this is an obvious one. In every area of marketing, it's important to measure results, not just continuing to do something and hoping that it's working and not really have any sort of measurements or analytics behind it. This is, again, another area where an automation tool can really help because I'm sure everyone on the line has probably struggled with being able to really analyze social efforts. With this being kind of newer on the digital scene for from a B2B perspective, we're slowly getting to a point where it really can be fully measured and fully a part of a lead and prospect journey. So, look back at what's working, what time of day are your posts performing best, what networks are your posts really being heard and listened to and engaged with. And then finally, our last tip would be to take risks, to just stay in your comfort zone in all areas of life, really, but especially when it comes to social. You know that you're pushing out a message that's basically out there for anyone and everyone to see. To kind of stay in your comfort zone, do the same thing, just share your blog, just, maybe one curated piece of content. So try something new, take risks. That's where the magic happens. We've actually shared competitors' content before that we think would be beneficial to our audience. And again, it's establishing ourselves as a thought leader in a risky way, but it's definitely something that you need to do to take your social to the next level. And examples for taking risks.
Yeah, actually. So I think along with taking risks, I feel like a huge part of it is injecting some personality sometimes. You know your market. I mean, and as a marketer, you should know your market. You should know the demographic of that market. Doesn't. But just as an example, I remember, I used to be a copywriter at a publishing company, and at that time, that company had 21 different publications, and all those publications spoke to different markets. So, for example, I would write for in a different way, in a more traditional way, than I would write for the lighting industry, because the lighting industry was a lot younger, a lot hipper. They were kind of more into that fresh approach, whereas the older generation in the construction industry wanted a more traditional advertising approach. It spoke to them. It worked for them. So obviously go with what you know, but for example, with the social media, even with just promoting this webinar, we could have gone online and said, okay, so we're having a webinar, you should join, we're going to teach you about things, it's going to be interesting. Well, we did say that, but what else we did was we kind of honed in on what exactly is the value here that, besides the fact that you're going to be getting these B2B social media tips, you're going to be getting these B2B social media tips in under half an hour, which is not what people are used to in a webinar. So we wanted to promote that. So instead of just, we're having a micro webinar, it's on that, I took some risks. I got social media posts, then you will know what I'm things that were tiny, micro donuts, a picture of a hamster eating a tiny taco. And, I kind of use that to tiny tacos are too small, micro webinars are just join us and learn about B2B social media tips. So I went outside the box. I got a little creative. I think that also depends partially on how much flexibility your own company gives you. I'm very fortunate in that my company is very open-minded to at the old publishing company I was at, not so much. So you have to work with your audience and work with what you can do. But as often as you can inject personality, I think you just have to think about, put yourself in the consumer's shoes. Basically, what would you want to see? What would interest you? What would engage you? And kind of go from there.
Awesome. Great. Well, those were our 10 tips for today. And I think we can probably open it up for questions now in the last 2 minutes that we do have.
Yeah, and while we're waiting on that, I just want to remind everyone, don't worry about taking notes. We are going to be sending you a recording of this webinar within the next 48 hours. Here's our contact information. If you are curious about some of the things that Cassie talked about this afternoon in terms of automating things, doing better tracking of your social media, products like Sales Fusion can really facilitate some of those things. So I encourage you to reach out to Cassie or I about about the Sales Fusion product. If you want to, you can also go on our website at techadv.com/product/salesfusion, and we have a page on there that will give you some details about the Sales Fusion product. And either one of us is happy to answer your questions and hopefully give you some helpful information.
Great.
See, what kind of metrics have you seen working in terms of, like, do you guys have a certain time of day that you post on your social media that you've seen people respond more?
Yeah, I think from a B2B perspective, especially in our industry, we do see kind of what you would expect as far as Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. as kind of the peak hours for posting. But we've been really surprised to see, we use our integration with Octopus to really look at that measurement specifically, and we've been surprised to find that the weekends, probably because your posts don't get as lost as they do during the week when everyone's posting, and they post performance. So about midday.
In relation to that midday, because I don't know if it's because people like to sleep in on the weekends, or they don't get around to checking their social media until they've done their morning routine and whatever they have to do, and then they sit down and kind of kick back for a little while. But I've noticed the exact same thing. Whatever reason is a weird time when
For sure. Yeah, I was shocked when I saw that Saturday especially was, a lot of our posts performed pretty well, and that was a definite.
For us during the week, 10 a.m. for whatever reason, and I'm guessing because or what have you, that's more of a middle ground in terms of time. If I'm Central Time, so if I'm posting at 8 a.m. my time, a lot of people in the other time zones are going to still be asleep. So
yeah,
that's not really, especially with Twitter, where, that stat you mentioned earlier about only 3% of your fans seeing your posts. Well, I can understand why, because just being on our Twitter page, just checking our Twitter page, if I'm on our Twitter page for 5 minutes, all of a sudden there's 18 or 25 new posts coming through the feed in the 5 minutes I'm on there. And if I post something, it's not even, I have to scroll all the way down to find it after that. So, I mean, there's so many, it makes sense that as many people really have to optimize when you're, understand when the best times to reach her and really maximize that for yourself.
Absolutely. And, with that said, I always tell people to not be afraid to, I would definitely suggest updating a little bit, but you can always reshare both content and even posts, especially on Twitter, because you do get lost within 30 seconds of posting, depending on how many of your followers are following a large subset of really companies, and any followers. That post is just going to be pushed down. And once visiting the profile itself, your message is kind of lost. So for those that kind of struggle with having a lot of content to share, whether it be curated or original, I would say go ahead and reshare existing messages. Don't make it too difficult on yourself.
I think that's a great tip. It looks like, unless we have any other questions come in the next couple of seconds here, I think we're ready to go. As I mentioned, please feel free to reach out to Cassie or I about any questions that you have, or if you want to check out the Sales Fusion product, or if you want to learn more about Technology Advisors, that's what we're here for. So we appreciated you joining us today. We hope that we brought you something of value. Cassie, thank you so much for being such an awesome presenter.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.